Hello all my lovely friends, my name is Avery and today is the 5th day of Preptober. In my last video we talked about creating a main character for your novel. I'll link that in the description below for anyone who hasn't seen it yet. But today we are going to be talking about creating an amazing cast of side characters. What are your side characters going to be like? What is their relationship to the protagonist? And how many of them are there going to be? Now, just like with your protagonist, you don't want your side characters to exist as plot devices. You want characters that your readers are going to be really heavily invested in and that they really care about. If you saw the last video, you'll remember that I suggested you make a list of all your favourite fictional characters and figure out what it is you liked about them. Well, that applies equally to the side characters. Any of your favourite character traits that you haven't applied to your main character, apply them to the side characters. Make your side characters as interesting as your main character. Give them backstories, give them unique personalities, give them hopes and dreams and ambitions. At the same time, be careful not to make your side characters too similar to the protagonist. The readers will be very bored if all the characters think and act in the same way. So be sure to give them different personality types, different goals and different motivations. You also need to consider what are all of the characters' relationships going to be to the protagonist. How do they know them? How do they feel about them? A side character could be a friend or family member, they could be an enemy or rival, they could be a spouse or a love interest, they could be a boss or co-worker, a classmate or a teacher. But presumably all of your characters are going to know the protagonist or protagonists in some way, and you need to consider what is their relationship to each other. How do they feel about each other and why? Will their personalities complement each other or will they clash? Let's come up with a couple of adoptable side characters. First of all, a character that complements the protagonist. Let's say your protagonist is quite a shy, introverted character. Could be a male character, could be a female character, doesn't matter. Enter the extremely outgoing and quirky best friend. She is loud, she is obnoxious, she wants to be the centre of attention all the time. All qualities that the protagonist would normally hate in a person. But this character's one saving grace is that she is extremely nice. One day at school, she notices the protagonist just sitting alone and reading a book by themselves, and she decides this person is in desperate need of a best friend to come and rescue them from their quiet, peaceful life, and that person is going to be her. So she latches onto the protagonist, won't stop talking to them while they're trying to read, drags them out to movies and parties when they just want to stay at home and study, constantly sets them up on blind dates that never work out. Their personalities are like chalk and cheese, but they absolutely love each other anyway, and they really complement each other because the quirky friend brings the protagonist out of their shell and introduces them to new people and new experiences that they would otherwise never have known, and the protagonist helps to ground the quirky friend in reality, calms her down when she's being overly dramatic, and takes care of her when she's being irresponsible. Now let's come up with two characters that clash. Let's say your protagonist, rather than being shy, is very headstrong and very stubborn and doesn't take crap from anyone. Enter the protagonist's rival. This is a man or a boy from an extremely wealthy family. Very spoilt, very entitled, very used to getting their own way. Now, one day, the protagonist and the spoilt brat cross paths. The spoilt brat barks an order at the protagonist, and the protagonist tells them, "What, are your legs broken? Do it yourself." The brat, of course, gets extremely offended. How dare you speak to me like that? Do you know who I am? And the protagonist tells him, yes, I do know who you are, and I really don't care. The spoilt brat is furious. No one has ever spoken to him like this in his life, and he is not going to let it go. He is going to use all of his influence and all of his money and power to ruin the protagonist's life. Now you might be wondering, how many characters should my novel have? Well, that depends on a whole lot of factors. It depends on the genre of your novel, it depends on the setting of your novel, and it depends on whether you intend for your novel to be a standalone novel or part of a series. Romantic novels, for instance, usually have a relatively small cast of characters because the focus of the novel tends to be on the two romantic leads. So I'd say if you're writing a romance novel, you could probably get away with having 10 characters or less. If you're writing a zombie apocalypse novel, on the other hand, you're going to need a relatively bigger cast of characters to serve as fodder for the zombies and to replace the characters that have already died. So I'd say a cast of 20 or more might be a better choice. Now, if you're writing a story about, say, a castaway on a desert island and you're a really skilled writer, you could potentially write an entire novel with only a single character. But if you're writing an epic fantasy series with multiple point of view characters, then your character count can grow into the hundreds. If you'd like my personal advice, I'd say less is more. For a single novel, a cast of between 10 and 30 characters is probably ideal. If your novel has too many characters, then some of your readers are going to start losing track of them all, and also you have to be a very skilled writer to create unique stories and personalities for hundreds of different characters. I would also say if you are writing your side characters and you find that two of them are really similar, then it might be worth combining the two characters together to make a single character so that the readers get more time with that one character and get more invested with that one character. Another piece of advice I'd give is try to keep minor characters to a minimum. Say there's a character in your book that shows up once, only says a single line, and then you never see or hear from them ever again. Well, consider, can that line be given to one of your other characters? Let's say, for example, you are writing a story about a really intelligent student from a really poor family that gets accepted into an extremely prestigious university on a full scholarship. So maybe as soon as they arrive at the school, the first interaction that student has is with some prick making fun of the protagonist's scruffy second-hand clothes. Now, later on in the book, maybe in the next chapter, your protagonist meets this really rich, snobby, arrogant character who is really jealous of how smart the protagonist is, and the two become instant rivals. Well, consider rewriting that earlier scene so that it is the rival who makes fun of the protagonist's clothes instead of some random character that we're never going to see again. Basically, every action or line of dialogue that a minor character has, ask yourself, could that action or line of dialogue be given to one of my main characters instead? Invest as little time as possible into throwaway characters, and instead try to invest that time in important characters, as it will make the readers care about the important characters more and give them one less pointless name to remember. Granted, sometimes throwaway characters are unavoidable for the sake of progressing the plot, but if they are avoidable, then avoid them. One last thing I'd like to mention about side characters is that a lot of the time an author will be writing or developing a side character and find that they've grown really attached to this character. This is their favourite character in the whole novel. They like this character even more than the protagonist. Well, if that happens to you and you find yourself loving one of the side characters more than your protagonist, well, consider it doesn't necessarily need to be that way. You could always have a little switch around. Make your protagonist one of the side characters and make your favourite character the protagonist. Now, this won't always work depending on the novel's plot and the character's actions and backstories, but it's definitely worth thinking about. If you find that there is a different character that you enjoy writing about more than you enjoy writing about the protagonist, there is nothing stopping you from making your favourite character the main focus of the story. So your homework for today is to try to come up with a list of between 10 and 30 characters for your novel. Give them all unique personalities and decide on what their relationship is with the protagonist. Think about what their goals are and do they align or conflict with the protagonist's goals? Will they be a help or a hindrance? For now, we are just focusing on the basics, but later on we will be creating character sheets to help flesh out your characters even more. In my next video, though, I'm going to be shoving my woke leftist propaganda down your throats and talking about diversity in literature. We are going to be deciding what gender, race and sexuality all of your characters are going to be. Does your cast need to be a little more diverse, or is it perhaps a little too diverse for the time and place it's set in? But that's it for today, folks. I hope I see you guys in the next video. Please don't forget to subscribe if you want to keep following my Preptober vlog, and good luck creating some awesome characters.